Welcome to Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech. I'm Alex Kinsella. Today, I'm running solo because all my co-hosts were otherwise occupied, unfortunately, but that's okay because I have two amazing guests. Karen Klink, who is the Director of Outpost Partnerships and Business Development here at Communitech.
Hello.
And I also have Stacey Curtis, who is the Vice President of People and Culture at one of our favorite startups, DOZR.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we were talking a little bit before we started recording, the origins of Outpost. So talk a little bit about Outpost first. So Communitech Outposts, go Karen.
Go Karen. So yeah, Outposts, it's an employer of record service, or EOR for short. So for anyone who's familiar with EOR, it's a way to help companies hire in countries where they don't have a legal entity set up. So when you're hiring, 1, 2, 3 people, it doesn't make sense to set up an entity on your own. Financially, it's a nightmare to do, and then you've got to manage that entity. So when you contract out to an employer of record like Outpost, we manage all of the in-country compliance as it relates to labor and employment law, and also help set up with healthcare benefits. And in the case of the U.S., specifically a 401k savings account as well.
Oh, I didn't even know about the 401k.
Yeah, not a lot of people do.
That should be front and center on the website. It probably is front and center on the website, and I just haven't looked.
I don't know. I'd have to check.
How many countries today is? Because last time I thought it was like somewhere over 40 countries.
Oh no, we're well over 150 now.
150 countries available. And so the thing that I always think, and when I talk to people about Outpost that's so valuable, is again, if you want to land internationally, you need boots on the ground.
Yes.
And that's what Outposts gives you.
Boots on the ground and land and expand. If you hire into a country and you realize this country's not working out for us, again, as the legal employer of record, we can help process that termination and a resignation so you can go into a country, test it out. If it's working and you're going to ramp up hiring efforts and you want to hire 10 folks, we're there with you. But if the country's not working out and you need to downsize, then we're also there to help with that as well. Right. So again, managing the compliance. As soon as you get outside of Canada, terminations can get super complicated very quickly.
When all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, right? So you're on the up and up with all the legal requirements.
Exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So, Stacey, we have you in today for a couple reasons. One, because we really like you. DOZR happens to be an Outpost client.
Indeed.
How we say that?
Yeah.
But you also have an inside story on the origin of Communitech Outpost. So before we get to the origin story, for those who don't know DOZR, can you tell us a little bit about the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So DOZR is a two-sided marketplace in the heavy equipment rental industry. We are across North America, the U.S. and Canada, but our entity is set up in Canada. So we've been so fortunate to be partnered with Communitech Outpost and able to hire within the U.S. across all of the states and ensure our compliance. One thing that Karen just mentioned there about not just being the employer of record, but also to be an extension of the organization. A lot of tech organizations are lean in the growth and scaling stage. And so for you to be able to have that expertise at your disposal and to have, an extra set of hands when things are really busy with ramping up or hiring, it's nice to have the ability to hire with the record of employment and the entity, the legal entity, but also to have the resources as an extension of yourself through HR to be able to manage things like payroll, benefits, the deductions for retirement, like 401k. That's a huge benefit for, small teams and lean teams. And so, from the perspective of DOZR, we've really benefited from that. But everything in tech, as we know, is full circle. We've all had the opportunity to work together in different companies. And I obviously worked at Communitech at one point, and I also worked at Sandvine, where at the time, CEO Dave Caputo came up with the concept for Communitech to run with a really reliable source for an employer of record. It wasn't yet then called Outpost, which I think is a great name, great handle.
Yeah, I think it was called Embassies or Communitech Embassies. Yeah, it wasn't Outpost.
Yeah. But I do really like Outpost. I think that's a great handle. And so, Dave, through some trials and tribulations that, I was experiencing at that time at Sandvine, being the head of global hiring, found this really great solution because it's not just about finding the employer of record, it's having somebody you can trust.
Yeah.
And that is local in Canada, so that you know that they are going to be on the up and up and going to be able to provide you with a contract that's in English and some of those other pieces that, I've definitely had to experience in my past, and it could create some challenges, absolutely. So, briefly about DOZR, and then a little bit more about how we're all connected here.
Well, it's always funny. In Waterloo, you find everyone knows everybody by at least 2 degrees of separation, sometimes fewer than that, which is always kind of funny. The one thing about Outpost that you mentioned that really kind of hits with me too is the trust. Not that this is a sales presentation for Outpost, but hiring people is really challenging wherever you're doing it. And if you're hiring internationally, you don't have knowledge of hiring and firing regulations, workplace safety even, right? So how does Outpost go about kind of keeping itself up to date on all those requirements and all those different geographies?
Yeah, so for the U.S. specifically, we've got a great relationship with our payroll provider. So we get automatic updates as it relates to any changes in employment law in whatever states that we have employees in. And then everywhere else, we've got a great partnership with Deal. So Deal is a big SaaS-based global EOR, and we're able to leverage all of Deal's compliance when it comes to changes in legislation and whatnot, wherever it is that we have employees all around the world. Yep.
And I would say, too, the team members that you have, Karen, that are working for you are phenomenal. They're just really dedicated to having a high quality of output, and they're going to do their own research and they're going to do their due diligence before informing, and they're really open and honest about things that they haven't come across, because we know in HR that there's always something new happening, and legislation's changing quicker than it ever has in my career. Over the last 5 to 6 years, everything's changing really rapidly versus 15 years ago. So I feel like we're working with really dedicated professionals that just will not misinform. And I think that comes with the Outpost brand, the Communitech brand. So it's been great.
And I would say over and above EOR, because Outpost is a program that is a part of Communitech, we want to stitch anyone who's not a part of the ecosystem into the ecosystem. So we want to help them beyond just EOR. So how else can we help you scale globally? Might it be an introduction to a trade commissioner, or maybe it's an introduction to BDC or EDC, or our partners at World Trade Center. So it's more this wraparound service. It's not just transactional where, yes, we can hire that person for you. It's how can we also help you be successful in that market? So it's more than just an EOR. It's more about the global support that we can provide to companies depending on where they're going to land next.
We were talking earlier just about DOZR as a business, and your focus now as a company is really on revenue. All companies are focused on revenue. It's kind of a silly thing to say, but growth versus revenue, what you're focused on. Outpost is helping hire salespeople. Kind of, DOZR, because how old is DOZR now? Like it's
10 years. Yeah. It's crazy how quickly things go when you're in that scaling stage, and you learn a lot, and things pivot constantly, right? In the early stages of a tech organization.
Because you've been there for how long? Sorry.
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah. So, I've seen a lot of transition and change. Particularly the economy has changed a lot over the last 3 years. And I think when I joined DOZR originally, we were really focused on growth at all costs, like many organizations. And we were lucky to, identify some trends that were going to require us to be more thoughtful about profitability as a long-term strategy. So, for ourselves, pivoting to profitability is a really primary focus, in addition to some other pieces, made us think more about, okay, we're going to have to focus our sales organization and develop our new business engagements. So with our business being primarily construction, obviously, the U.S. and the southern states are our key geos. So we needed to get boots on the ground so that we can have local presence and hear kind of what's going on in the market. There is a lot that we can do from, the Google ad space, social media spend, but there's something to be said for being present in your market to understand what your customers are feeling, seeing, experiencing. So for ourselves, we really did the research and the preparations to get into these key geos. And then, it was Outpost that was able to enable us to be able to, have one team member in several different states across the U.S. and make sure that we're compliant within each state and be able to, tailor our approach.
I was going to say, like, construction's pretty person-to-person, reputation-based industry.
Very much.
When you're hiring people, like, how do you go about finding the people in those industries who have those is someone who has those connections important for you? How do you find them? And how do they feel about working? Let me rephrase that. Are they from tech companies? Like, are they salespeople for tech companies, or are these construction people that you're kind of bringing in to do tech sales, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it is primarily folks that have experience in the construction space, drilled down more so in the heavy equipment rental. You need to be able to understand what your customer's job is in order to be able to give advice or recommendations on the piece of equipment that's going to be successful in helping them achieve their role or their job. So for ourselves, our sales roles need to be folks that have, that experience in construction as a minimum, but, heavy equipment rental is definitely that bonus or something that we try and seek out as much as possible. Because we have been in the sector for 10 years, we do have pretty strong contacts. We have a lot of suppliers that we've worked with over the 10 years. So, that does tend to create a bit of buzz. And a lot of folks that join us have at some point in their career, had a touch point with DOZR. So they might have worked for, a former supplier. They might have, interacted with us, even renting the equipment themselves through DOZR. So a lot of times, we leverage our network, but I also do quite a bit of sourcing. To find the right talent that's going to be able to help us grow our business. So
and you're VP of People and Culture. From a culture perspective, how do you build like the DOZR or extend the DOZR culture to your employees in the States? And how do you make them, and across Canada too, like outside of KW, how do you make them feel part of the company?
Absolutely. What's interesting is that we've really leveled the playing field and that everybody is now remote within our organization. And I've heard people talk about, when there's the in-office culture versus the remote culture and how there sometimes can be, not always, but there sometimes can be an assumption that the people in the office are going to get priority with promotions or, build stronger relationships with leadership if they're having that exposure. So us going fully remote really did level the playing field. We all know we're all remote from home. We need to make a greater emphasis on communication on a regular basis, so that everyone feels like they are informed. And it really is about being our authentic selves. We have one of our founding ways is authenticity, because we have a really mixed, diverse group. We are across, North America, and we have some folks actually that sit in the Philippines as well, and India. But we want to make sure that it doesn't matter where you are physically located. It doesn't matter what industry you've come from. We want to make everybody feel included and supported in the same ways, but at the same time, make sure that we're adapting. So that, if you have come from the construction sector versus the tech sector, where our software developers, would have that experience and exposure, we're going to be as inclusive and as thoughtful about what you need to be set up for success versus what somebody who's always been in the tech sector would need to be set up for success. So it's constantly adjusting. It's constantly, being thoughtful to what team members need and a lot of touch points. I feel like when we onboard somebody, I spend kind of a lot of time in preparation to them joining the organization, having touch points. And then, I do orientation with them. And then I touch base at the end of the first week, the second week, and then 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to check in and see how are you doing? How are things going? It may be something as quick as a Slack message. It may be, a one-on-one conversation that we schedule and is a little bit more formalized. But it's important just to say, is it what you expected? What would you need different to feel set up for success? So it's a really unique industry, I guess. I came from tech, you both know. But for me, this is the first time where it's really been that intersection of construction and technology. And, the blending isn't as painful as you would think. We manage.
Well, I was going to say, too, like you and I both worked at organizations with a headquarters and regional offices. And I think the same kind of cultural problems that you talked about with a in-office culture versus a remote culture, we've seen with that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And interesting, like that just brings me back to the BlackBerry days where BlackBerry obviously headquartered.
That was my one.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to say it out loud.
But like had a huge American sales force, and it was done very strategically because Americans like buying from Americans. And I think Canadians often think, oh, well, we speak the same language, like we share a border. You know, it's the same as selling in the US as it is in Canada. We'll just do it all from Canada. But I think they fail to recognize like there is a huge cultural difference between just sales and the mentality in the US. And what we've found in working with a lot of clients who use Outposts is they need someone who's experienced in dealing with like that American sales culture and that American mindset to be successful.
Yeah, find the right people.
Yeah.
Right?
And absolutely what's happening too in the regions, right? With the U.S., there's a lot of things moving and shaking. And so, you know, in the construction sector, it's very impacted, you know, particularly some of the things that are going with immigration. You know, so it's important for us to have people that are present to be able to inform us that, you know, job sites are shutting down in some cases or, you know, being put on pause or, you know, that sometimes they don't have the staff required to operate. So, you know, those bits of information are really important. Or, you know, there's wildfires in California where they just cannot get enough equipment brought in, you know, to kind of clean up some of the devastation. So some of those things are things maybe we don't have exposure to every single day or think about every single day, but somebody who's local and has that intel can be really helpful to us in our preparations and planning.
Mm-hmm. Okay, switching gears slightly. So you mentioned that you're fully remote now as a company. You've been around for 10 years and pretty integrated. I'd say DOZR is one of the more well-known tech companies in town. How do you go about continuing to build that presence and that identity here? Or is that a priority as kind of saying you're a Kitchener-Waterloo-based company?
I think we have really strong roots in the region. We really love being a part of the tech scene in Kitchener-Waterloo. I'm really proud, you know, being from Kitchener-Waterloo. We share that message whenever we can. You know, we still love to be partnered with Communitech and having conversations like this. You know, the three of us sitting down and chatting gives people awareness and visibility about DOZR. But I would think that, you know, as we shift, we are more thoughtful about being, you know, a global or, you know, global employer, but a North American, you know, product and servicing our customers across North America. So I would say that it's always super important for us. You know, the founders are from the region as well, and they're really, really proud of their beginnings. And I echo that absolutely, but that doesn't mean we're losing sight of, you know, the North American needs and again, why Outpost has been so valuable for us.
Kind of looking internationally then, is there beyond North America can you talk about that? I don't know if that's a secret, right? But
right at the moment, you know, our focus is North America. Yeah, we're participating in an over $60 billion industry, just the rental, not the sales of heavy equipment, and it's growing every year. So, you know, we don't have a large enough percentage of the market to be thinking about, you know, Europe or any expansion at that point. We really want to focus on building out because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit still here for us. But it's not to say that wouldn't be an option. You know, we're positioned to do some great things. And so I think that it could be in the future.
What inspires you on DOZR's mission right now? Like what gets you going?
I could see the impact of my work. Being a small team, you really are able to see the impact of your work every single day. Kevin Forrestell, the CEO, is a brilliant, dedicated individual, and we like to talk about on a daily basis the win for the day. What was our win today? Sometimes they're small wins, sometimes they're big wins, but we're always thinking about moving the needle forward and how we're creating improvements, driving efficiencies, you know, and there's always a win each and every day. And I think, you know, when your leadership team values your work and you can see the impact of your work, you never stop thinking about your role or your company, right? It's not that I, you know, get myself out of bed thinking about the impacts I'm going to make. I go to bed thinking about what I'm going to do the next morning, you know, thinking about, okay, I've thought about something, really excited. I don't know if you guys ever do this, but jot down, a note for yourself at 3 a.m. and then, whoever you want to ping about it, you ping as soon as you're up for the day and make sure it makes sense and it's legible. I think that is the sign that you're in an organization that's a good fit for you. And so, for myself, it's seeing the impact of my work every day.
Yeah. In your career, you've worked in some sizable organizations, global organizations. What's the biggest difference from that? Like where DOZR is a large 70 people, it's a big organization, but it's still a smaller startup, right?
Yeah.
So what do you kind of see as the difference for you as a people leader in that versus like a Sandvine or a Communitech even? Yeah,
absolutely. I think that there's pros and cons to every organization, right? There's things that are going to be a little bit frustrating for anyone in any role, not just leadership. But I feel that one thing that I really value about this size of organization is the ability to pivot. You can change directions really quickly. You're small and nimble. Whereas when you get to be, 1,000 employees, publicly traded, strong global presence, you're not pivoting as quickly anymore. There's going to be layers of approval, and there's going to be, data points and presentations and all kinds of things that you need to be able to present to multiple individuals before you can proceed forward. Whereas I think when you're in that scaling stage, you do have the ability to, of course, justify your decisions, have the data points, but you move so much quicker. And I think that can be really rewarding and really exciting. And another one of our founding ways is that, we want to be bold, take risks, and learn from our experiences. And I find you learn so much in, small organizations about what works and what doesn't. And absolutely, you can have those experiences in the larger organizations as well. They just might not be as rapid.
Yeah. If you were talking to someone today who's starting out their career in HR, people and culture, what would you say? Like, what's your go-to advice?
It's such a different world now. And I think, Karen being in HR capacity as well would agree with me that there's so much that has changed. It used to be, HR was a couple buckets. Now HR is a whole lot of different things, right? We are hiring, we're managing performance, we're managing learning and development. We have to be thoughtful about coaching, employees and coaching executives, and maximizing our team members' outputs and progression of our team members, and so many different components and capacities as companies are rapidly changing, and the industries are changing really quickly, keeping up with technology, utilizing all of that within our roles. So I think if I was advising somebody getting into HR, I would say find the bucket that you love and become an expert in that area. And then, always have that as your foundation. I know when I chat with people, they say, what do you love most about, HR people? And for me, it's always been talent attraction, talent acquisition. I started out as a recruiter, and I feel like I'm always a recruiter at heart. And, on those really tough days where you just want to do something that you know well and you're really comfortable with, for me, that's recruitment. That's reviewing resumes. That's contacting people. That's interviewing people. That still fills my cup. I love giving people offers. I have so many good memories even from in this building of giving people offers that still work with Communitech, and thinking about the excitement and the optimism in those moments of, they just can't wait to get in the door and make their impact. And so for me, that fills my cup. And for some people, it might be building compensation structures. And that for me, is a part of the gig, but it's not my favorite. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So at what point should a founder look to hire a full-time HR individual to kind of take on that HR component? Because I know a lot of founders out there wear multiple hats. One of the hats is more the operational side. So they're, doing sales or doing ops or maybe dipping their toe into financing. But how do you Yeah, how do you know when you need to hire somebody dedicated to HR?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's been some, predictions about, when is the right time. And usually they say that it's around 50 employees is a good time to bring in one HR individual. There's just enough requirements at that point with regards to, attrition, requests, supporting things like performance, learning and development. By the time you have 50 employees, you probably have the need to have that, individual in place full time or at least in a fractional capacity. And then I would say it depends also on the state of the business. So if you're 50 and you're holding at 50, you have really low attrition, you're not really looking to change too much or grow, you might be able to get by with fractional. If you're 50 and you're rapidly growing and for whatever reason, the nature of your business has some attrition aspects to it, you might be looking at one senior, one junior, so that you can focus on some strategies as well as, some of the administrative day-to-day tasks. So, it could be, at that 50 mark, or for some businesses, it could be higher, 75, 100, depending on, what their specific needs are. But I think, not just Outpost, but also Communitech having the growth coaches, I think, knowing that you have a great roster of, executive HR folks who can go in and advise, like, hey, you've kind of hit that threshold there where I think you would benefit from having somebody on site with you or remote, but they could help to determine what the level of expertise will be. So maybe it's a junior, just to help out with keeping up with some of the administrative stuff, or maybe it's intermediate. Because things are fairly stable, but there is the occasional, decision point, or maybe it's executive because they have a lot of growth or a lot of change up and coming. So, yeah, I'd say it depends on the company, but yeah, I know some of the great growth coaches here that could help out with companies and advise as well.
I wouldn't have said 50. I would have said like 15.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot less. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think, when we think about the way companies are operating now in such a lean fashion, you were talking, Karen, about they're doing sales, they're doing, HR. Yeah, a lot of founders are. And it's impressive to see what they achieve, and when you join the organizations, or when I've, done some advising as well, to come in and see, wow, you've done a really great job of, maintaining the basic requirements. Like, you're payrolling folks, you're putting policies in place, you're using the resources available to you to make sure that you have, the basic foundations in place, and good on you. When there isn't the funding there, that's great that you can, have those things still in place. But yeah, to be able to get to the next level, a lot of times it is great to be able to, put that person in place if you can. But I know that not always is that an option, right? When you're trying to hire developers to be able to create the product, you have to think about, okay, do I want to put an HR person in place, or, do I want to get this product out the door? So, it can be challenging to make those decisions depending on where their funding's at. But so yeah, I'm always impressed with our ecosystem and how they are so resilient and so resourceful.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I want to give Karen one more opportunity to plug Outposts. You got to plug it. How do people learn about, well, I don't know how they learn about it. If someone's interested in learning more about Outposts,
they can reach out directly to me.
Right to you? Okay.
Yeah. So they can reach out to me. All of my contact info is on the Communitech webpage.
It'll be in the show notes.
So yeah, you can go to Outpost, the Outpost webpage on Communitech, and my contact details are there. Happy to chat with anybody, founder, HR, talk to a lot of ops people as well, looking to just investigate how would one go about hiring somebody in the U.S. or what's involved.
Do you have to be a Communitech member?
You do not have to be a Communitech member. You just have to be a Canadian company.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you do want to become a Communitech member and avail yourself of all the growth coaches and other opportunities and support for your growing startup, you can visit communitech.ca. Learn all about the membership opportunities and get some contact info and talk to one of our founder success managers. Anyways, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Likewise, yeah, it's been great.